Hey everybody, welcome. We're going to be doing things a little bit differently this week. So my setup is set up because I'm in the middle of filming the newest version of our program right now. And so things will look a little different. I got all my lights set up over here. But today I was thinking that I really wanted to provide some content for you that I thought would be very helpful. I've been thinking about what has been causing a lot of our clients anxiety and mental health issues recently. And I can't shake this overwhelming pattern I'm noticing of seeing people pleasing popping up all the time. And it was one of the big things that caused me mental health challenges. And I think a lot of you guys are dealing with this, where you feel you're driving your sense of self-worth reliant upon how you end up making other people feel or how other people feel around you. And I know a lot of you guys are feeling highly reactive to the environments that you are in, social, either at your workplace, in your family, with different relationships, with your romantic partners. And I know for a lot of you, your anxiety and your depression will get very set off pretty much immediately as soon as you feel like somebody is upset. So I wanted to kind of tackle this particular topic head on for you guys and share a couple insights that have been working really well for our clientele and just dig into it. And of course, as always, add any comments or questions you have there in the comment section and we'll be happy to serve you in whatever way we can. So first, I want to define people pleasing, right? So to do that, I want to back up a little bit. So there's a question that you want to make sure that you ask yourself if you want to have a better understanding as to why you probably have the mental health challenges that you do, which is, first of all, whose love did you crave more growing up, your mother's or your father's? It could have also been a step-parent, a grandparent, or some other parent figure. But for the vast majority of you, it's going to be either your mother's or your father's. And this is not who did you love more or who loved you more, but whose love did you crave more? That's the first thing that you want to answer. Okay, so try to think about who that is. And then what you want to answer next is, who did you have to be in order to get that person's love or to get that person's attention, all right? And so if you feel like you have people-pleasing tendencies, there's a very high likelihood that who you thought you had to be as a kid was you had to be, there's a term that I use for it that we call like the good boy or the good girl, right? Where you're not causing trouble, you're not being disruptive, you're not irritating anybody, anything of that nature. You're not causing a problem. And the people-pleasing tendency will especially occur if you had a parent figure who seemed highly emotional or could essentially like go off the handle. So that was kind of my experience. So my stepfather and I have a fantastic relationship now. I love the man. He's a great guy. We just had some challenges growing up, and he had some of his own issues he was dealing with, and I was very sensitive to that. And he would kind of go off the handle really abruptly. It could be like everything's even keel, and then all of a sudden one little thing is wrong, and boom, it's like explosive anger and really scary stuff as a kid. And so what that creates psychologically is a pattern of wanting to anticipate when somebody's mood might be going down, so that way you can prevent that from occurring as a survival mechanism. So every negative pattern that arrives mental health wise is some type of an adaptation. It is trying to serve you. It is trying to help you in some way. A very simple example would be you have no anxiety and then all of a sudden you get in a car accident and you almost die. And so now all of a sudden, as soon as you go driving, you start to feel anxious. That's a survival mechanism. Your brain is trying to piece together, hey, this thing equals pain, so let's avoid that thing in the future, so we can make sure that we survive. And so when you're growing up, you're highly susceptible to picking up little subtle cues, particularly from your parents, of who you think you have to be and how you think you have to behave in order to survive and thrive in that particular environment. Because there is nothing scarier to a child than the prospect of no longer having your parents' love. We rely on our parents' love for survival. It's our biological instinct. It's hardwired into us to try to conform and do whatever it is that we can to stay in the good graces of the people we rely on for our survival. And so if you were anything like me, the pattern that I developed was, okay, Anytime my stepdad is even remotely upset, it means big, big problems. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to not ever make him upset. I'm going to do everything I possibly can to stay out of the way, be quiet if that's what he needs me to do, help out if that's what he needs me to do. Whatever I got to do, I will bend over backwards to make sure I don't have to go through that scary moment of feeling like he's upset and who knows what's going to happen next. Right? And so chances are that you had a very similar thing take place. If it wasn't with one of your parents, it could have been your peer group, or it could have been a romantic partner, because we tend to get influenced based off of who we think we have to be in that ascending order. It starts with our parents and then it goes up from there. Okay, so that's what people pleasing is. That's where it comes from. And as these patterns manifest in adulthood, they tend to outlive their usefulness. So even though trying to please your parent may have been very helpful for you to survive and navigate during your childhood because it helped you stay in better graces of those individuals, as an adult, it tends to become a neurotic experience where now what's happening is your mind is scanning your environment and whomever you're with, and it's trying to constantly anticipate who is upset with me, what could I do that might upset them, oh my gosh, did I upset them? Right? You end up overthinking things you said at dinner parties the night before. You end up trying to think through all of the word choices that you're going to make before you go out. You can even develop huge social anxiety because you can't seem to figure out in your head how you could go and interact with people but not offend them. Right? All of those types of things can take place for people. And so what ends up happening is you end up realizing that you're playing an unwinnable game. So some of you guys have seen my video that a lot of you have given incredible feedback on, where I talked about how, one way of understanding the real source of anxiety and depression. And the metaphor I use is, if you think of like playing a board game. If you're trying to play a board game and you're trying to win that board game, the degree to which you are going to be able to win that board game is going to depend on how easy the rules are to follow. And so we all are trying to win, quote, win, right, the game of life with our own particular set of rules. And these particular set of rules tend to be forged in the early beginnings of our childhood based off of who it is that we think we have to be and who it is that we think we have to never be in order to make sure that we can thrive and survive. So if you grew up in an environment where you pieced together and learned, nope, I can't do anything that's going to upset anybody, then you essentially created a set of beliefs. You created a set of rules of, I must always make sure people are happy around me, or else I am losing at the game of life. I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to feel secure. I'm not going to feel any of those things, right? And so imagine trying to play a board game where the only way you can win is if all of the other players do what they are supposed to do. Wouldn't that be a very frustrating game to try to play? In fact, it would be pretty much an impossible game to play and to win. And as you're trying to play that game, you'd just be perpetually stressed out and neurotic about, oh gosh, what's this person doing and what's that person going to do and da 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 da. And so a lot of you have created a belief system where your sense of fulfillment and peace of mind, you're trying to derive your fulfillment and peace of mind externally. The only way you win the game of your own life is if everybody else does what they're supposed to do, and if nobody else is in a bad mood, and if all of these different circumstances in your life that are largely outside of your control happen to coincide with your expectations. And that becomes a very big problem. So the name of the game to make sure that you can live anxiety and depression free in the long term is you have to rewrite the script that you have been using to live your life. You cannot win the game of life long term if the only way you win is if everybody around you is pleased and nobody is ever in a bad mood. It's just not going to happen. You will lose that game again and again. It will not happen. Okay? So I'm seeing some comments here, by the way, too, I want to address. So I see one comment here that says, I was raised by a narcissist, and then I see another one that says, I am a people pleaser, and then I see another one that says, I live with a narcissist. So I want to caution you guys on something. Be very, very careful with labeling yourself or other people, okay? Particularly yourself. So here's the metaphor that I like to use. Like, if you've got a phone, right? So all of you guys have a phone or a device you're watching this on. You ever have your phone and it works fine for a while, and then after a couple of months, all of a sudden it starts getting slow or it starts glitching out and it starts frustrating you, and then you need a software update? There's nothing wrong with the hardware. There's something wrong with the software, right? The software just simply needs to be updated. So please don't label yourself or others just because they have a particular pattern of personality that is currently damaging. Because when you create a label like that, particularly for yourself, you are now defining your problem in unsolvable terms, and you're going to immediately take your self-esteem down dramatically. See, there's a big difference between I have had people-pleasing tendencies, right? Or I have had a pattern of people-pleasing in the past, and I am a people-pleaser, right? Because our mind believes whatever it is that we tell it on a regular basis. Repetition creates belief. So when you repeat, I am this, I have always been this, I will always be this, then what you're doing is you are perpetually making yourself feel more certain of the very thing that you're trying to shake. So instead, I highly recommend saying, I'm currently working on my patterns of people pleasing, right? Or when you think about somebody else, I know that right now in pop psychology, it's like the #1 most popular thing to label people narcissists, but that'd be like you being sensitive one day and then calling you a snowflake, right? Nobody is ever one particular way, one particular time, all the time. That's just not how it is. And you can never get closer to somebody and repair a relationship when you're labeling them, right? Because you're judging them. It's not helpful. It's much better to think in terms of patterns. We all have patterns and tendencies, and those patterns and tendencies change over time. Nobody is necessarily going to be that particular way their whole life, right? I think that's a very, very diminishing way to look at humanity. And I think when we look at other people as, oh, you're inherently this type of person and there's no hope for you, that makes us believe that we are unchangeable as well. And I'm just not a fan of that. I'm not in favor of us endorsing any type of a belief system that limits us and limits other people and puts them in a box. Because that's the last thing in the world we ever want other people to do to us, is notice a temporary behavior or pattern that we are having and then have them label us and judge us, right? That's the epitome of what we absolutely hate, but then we go around and do it to other people, okay? So it's okay to recognize that you have some tendencies, and if people pleasing is one of those, that's okay. You just need to work on that a little bit. And let's talk about that a bit. So there's a couple distinctions I've found are really helpful to reduce the people-pleasing tendency and to increase self-esteem. So the first big thing I would highly recommend is starting to prioritize an internal frame of reference as opposed to an external frame of reference. So think of that board game analogy I gave, right? You don't want the rules of the game dependent on what other players do. You want to set it up so that you can win the game of life based off of what you do and your own actions, right? And so, of course, the obvious examples would be making sure that you can do whatever is within your control to do, right? And then making sure that you are able to especially do whatever you can to influence the circumstances around you, but you are not getting yourself all bent out of shape around things that you just simply cannot control. A big tendency people have who have had a pattern of people-pleasing is they will spend so much time focusing on the past, right? But of course you can never change the past. So if the only way you win the game of your life is if the past is rewritten, I'm sorry, but you're going to lose. You're going to feel like you're losing. So you got to update that. You've got to practice this. I'm not saying it's easy necessarily. I'm just saying it's necessary, and it is a daily practice, right? And it becomes easier with time. Letting go of the expectations of how things should have gone before, doing the best that you can in the moment whenever you possibly can, letting go of the fact that you cannot control other people's reactions. You can just do your best to do right by them, and that's the best that you can do, right? And then also, I highly recommend making sure that you start to ask yourself more sincerely, what is it that you want in your life? This was a very interesting thing that happened to me a little while ago, where I remember my wife was in the middle of her kind of health crisis this past year when she had a cancer diagnosis. And so I was helping take care of her, and our life kind of got turned a little upside down for a while. And, family members and stuff would call and they'd say, hey, how's everything going with you guys? And I would just say, oh yeah, well, she's doing okay, and she's had this appointment, and she's got this going on, and the doctors are telling us this, and da 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 da. And then my family members and stuff would be like, yeah, but how are you doing? Right? And I was honestly like disoriented by the question. And I would say like, well, I'm doing okay. I mean, because Liz, my wife's doing this and she's doing that and the appointment's going like this and hopefully we'll have some good news. And they'd go, no, no, no. How are you doing? And it just kind of hit me of like, oh my gosh, my frame of reference has been so wrapped around other people's well-being, and to the point that at that period of time I felt like my self-esteem was not really there unless my wife was doing well. And that's when that whole health crisis was kind of an awakening for me, because I realized that a lot of those pleasing tendencies that I thought I had really gotten rid of because they weren't showing up in my regular daily life were all of a sudden really aggravated and brought to the surface because of the unexpected situation of the health problem. And so I had to start to analyze like, okay, well, look, all I can do is what's in my control and my power to help my wife, but there are plenty of things that I cannot control about this situation. Some days she's just going to be in a bad mood because she's going through treatment and she's, going to be upset. And so I can't totally control that. I'll do whatever I can to make her happy, but I can't require that she is happy in order for me to feel good, right? That's going to create a bad dynamic for both of us. So I had to really sincerely kind of say, you know what, this is a period of time where, yes, I want to prioritize her and I need to make sure that I'm doing so, but I can't obsess over making sure that every need of hers is taken care of to the point that I drive my own mental health into the ground. So I had to sincerely look myself in the mirror and be like, you know what, okay, what are my needs right now through this process? Like, how can I make sure I'm taking care of me too, so that way I'm able to take care of her? And I had to kind of reaffirm like, okay, you know what? I need to make sure I haven't been working out. That's a problem for me. I got to do that. I haven't been meditating. I haven't been working towards my goals. I had to reaffirm what makes me happy so that way I could serve her better too. And so that's a very helpful thing for you to kind of do. And it may even be a question you're not used to if you've had such a pattern of people pleasing in the past. It may feel strange or unfair or like you are unworthy to even ask yourself, like, what do you want? But you do have the right to do that. You have the right to say, what do I want in my life? What brings me joy? What would I like to fill my time with? So that way you change the focus of reference from being external, outside of yourself, to being inside of yourself. So think of it as like, imagine you had like a basketball-sized like orb of energy. I know this is kind of a weird metaphor, but just stick with me. It kind of came to me a couple weeks ago and it tends to work out. Think of that as like your power, right? That's your power. And what we do very often is we like to pass our power away, right? And that's what I was doing on those calls when my family was like, well, how are you doing? I go, oh yeah, well, my wife is da 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 da. It's like, well, I'm handing my power over only to my wife's well-being. And if she's good, then I'm good. But if she's not good, I'm not good, right? Because the power is now over here. I've put it over here. And we do this mentally all the time, where we love to say, I'd really love to be happy and I'd love to feel less anxiety, but the economy, but COVID, but my mother-in-law. And what we do by creating all of these different external focuses is we're giving our power away, right? Those things don't inherently have power over you, only to the degree to which you focus on them continuously, you give them energy, and you endorse a belief that they do have power over you. If you habitually give your power away, you're going to feel powerless and hopeless. And that's what happens, is people who feel powerless and hopeless consistently mentally always check the external frame of reference, not the internal frame of reference anymore. They don't have a North Star set on their own compass. They don't know what they want. They don't know what they're going after. All they're doing is feeling reactive to everything else. And that's why they can feel easily triggered, because they've put all their power outside of themselves in the environment and in other people. And so whenever the environment or other people don't do what they want them to do, immediately they feel triggered. And that's why we feel this tendency to feel powerless and hopeless and stressed out, and then we like to blame other people. And we say, well, my mental health would be great if only this person wasn't such a jerk. No, BS. You're giving that person the power to determine whether you have well-being or not, right? Unless you're under the age of 18 and you're living under their roof and, you're not legally able to go outside of that place, right? Or unless you're being held against your will, right? You're giving somebody power that they don't deserve to have over you, all right? And so what do we do instead of people pleasing? How do you start to create an internal frame of reference where you can feel like you are winning the game of life consistently and you don't feel like your well-being is just tied up in how other people are doing? Well, I think a big part of that is making sure that you do things that are totally obtainable and achievable only on your own without having to rely on other people. And there are 3 big examples I can give you. The first big one that you can start to do is, instead of trying to prioritize pleasing everybody else, instead prioritize growth of yourself, growth in any type of way at all. And there's a million ways to do it. It can be learning new skills. It can be reading books. It can be joining a class, going to school, getting a job, volunteering, doing a hobby, learning a sport. Anything in the world you could think of where you say, you know what am I going to do to grow today? I totally left out physical exercise. That would be a good example. If you focus on each day, all right, what can I do to feel like I am growing in my life? I'm shifting the needle from one place to the next place consistently on a daily basis or a weekly basis. Your fulfillment will rise tremendously. Your self-esteem will rise tremendously, because all of a sudden you are playing a version of the game of life that you can win, that you are in control of, that you are totally able to do. It's very accessible. You can do it any moment. It doesn't have to please anybody else. It's just something in your own right that you can do. Most people who have a people-pleasing tendency are not focused on growth. They're trying to feel certain and safe in their relationships and secure that everybody else feels the way they want them to feel. So growth is a surefire path to more fulfillment. The second one would be love and connection, but love and connection from the outside, from the inside going out, not the outside going in, right? So the people-pleasing thing is where we want other people to be happy, but it's not really that we want other people to be happy because we care about them. It's actually kind of a selfish pattern of thinking. We want them to be happy so that way we feel good about ourselves. And that is not a loving, caring, contributing thing. That is a selfish thing, right? I'm not calling you a selfish person. I'm just saying we've all had selfish patterns at times. So what is different is to send love outward instead of feeling pissed off and triggered and reactive when other people get upset or don't do what you want them to do, and you feel like the love is not coming back to you, right? Instead, just do what is loving without expecting anything in return. Do what is loving without requiring that it immediately uplifts that other person and changes their mood. Do whatever you can that is loving just for the sake of feeling good about having given your love to somebody else without measuring whether it's giving enough, okay? And that takes a little practice. But really the key thing there's a phrase that I came up with a couple weeks ago, and I keep it in mind a lot, and it's helped me and maybe it'll help you. And that is, instead of trying to be everything to everyone all the time, try to give what you can, when you can, to who you can. Right? Because if you just give what you can, to who you can, when you can, that means you're still taking care of yourself. Right? That still means that you're keeping your own batteries filled up. It means that you're not relying on measuring whether you're giving enough compared to this imaginary ideal in your head, but you're just giving for the sake of giving and feeling good about what you're giving. That becomes a game that is far more winnable than I have to give enough or I have to please everybody. Okay, and that's just not a very winnable thing. Okay, so on that point, I want to just kind of differentiate, because I think that this is really the difference between pleasing and service. Pleasing is, let me do something for you to try to please you because I only feel good about myself if you are pleased. That is not a selfless thing. That is a selfish thing. Service is, let me do what actually helps you and serves you, whether it pleases you or not, but I'm going to do what actually serves you. So an example of this would be parenting, for example. You could be a parent and you could be seeking to just please your kids, right? Like, okay, honey, all right, I know you shouldn't watch a 12th hour of TV, but I'll let you do it because I don't want you to scream anymore. Okay, go ahead, watch the TV, right? Like where you compromise your values to please, to pacify, to make things easy, to make yourself feel more comfortable, right? And we've all done this in different relationships at different times. Service, however, doing what is truly best for that person may mean you need to bear the brunt of their disapproval temporarily because it's what is truly going to serve them at the deeper level, right? And I have had to create this transition for myself as a coach over the years, because when I got started with coaching, I just wanted people to be happy and pleased because I was feeling insecure and I didn't want people to, question me and, my beliefs and my processes. And I just wanted, I just wanted to keep my clients happy. And I was more insecure at that time. And the problem with that was I wouldn't be honest. I wouldn't tell them what they really truly needed to hear from time to time because I just wanted to keep them happy. And so what I learned though is I was shortchanging them and I was really then being selfish. So what I had to start to do is I had to be more service oriented, and that's why I try to do, I'm not perfect by any means, but that's what I try to do now with every session and every call and every piece of content is I'm just thinking, what if you were a friend of mine that was in pain, that's in a painful moment, what is the best thing I can come up with right now to tell you that I think will help you? And I know sometimes it'll be more helpful and sometimes it'll be less helpful, but if I just focus on trying to serve you and tell you what I think you truly need to hear, I can live with the fact that some things I'm going to tell you might even trigger you or upset you, or you might be like, oh, screw you, dude. But like, I know that so long as I keep showing up with that intention of really trying to look after your best interests, that you'll feel that my intent is sincere, and I'm sure that I'll be able to help you more than if I were just in my head trying to analyze how you might interpret every little word and every little thing I might say, where then no value comes out. It's just going to feel like fluff, right? Because I'm just so worried about offending you, right? So service is about doing what is required to really help somebody. And that leads to lasting self-esteem, lasting fulfillment, because at the end of the day, you can put your head on your pillow and be like, you know what? I really helped that person. Like I really did. I wasn't perfect, but I really showed up with a true intent to help that person. And I know what I did was helpful in some way, as opposed to laying your head on the pillow at night and going, oh my gosh, I hope that they weren't offended. And I don't even like what I said or what I did. And I don't even like the person I was pretending to be at the dinner party, but I hope they liked it. Right? That is not a winnable, sustainable game. It's just not going to work for you. Okay. So I want to point out to you lastly here that sometimes when people have had a people-pleasing tendency and they're so used to deriving their sense of self-worth based off of other people's opinions and emotions and reactions, they feel so reactive and triggered by that they then will sometimes overcorrect and decide they're going to cut off relationships and say, you know what, screw you, I'm not going to talk to you. Or that's when we feel the urge to label people or to just stop talking to them. And we like to blame them, when really what it was is we had a set of beliefs that they had to be a certain way in order for us to feel good enough about ourselves a lot of the times, right? And so what people end up doing is they say, great, I'm not going to do anything now. I'm not going to people please. I'm not going to try anymore. But then they stop giving, right? They stop being of true service. So then they really don't feel fulfilled either. And so you can't live an insular life where your focus is just on you and your own problems and feel fulfilled. It's impossible. You have to get your energy and your intention outside of yourself. You have to take your energy from going in and going down to going up and out to the world. And that means either focusing on ways you can grow, or it means focusing on ways you can truly serve and contribute without being hung up on whether you're contributing or serving enough. That's the whole pleasing attitude. It's just giving what you can, when you can, for who you can, as often as you can. And when you feel like you truly can't give something, then that's fine. Take a break, recharge, take a bath, go do what you need to do for yourself, and that's fine. And then taking care of yourself becomes an act of service because it's recharging you so you can then go serve other people at a higher level. But you will never feel fulfilled by trying this people-pleasing game. It will not work. It will always lead to pain. So please don't do it. Let me check here real quick. I think we might have some questions. I see Jennifer says, I was in a dark place 2 years ago and felt suicidal, so I had to come home and realized that I have to put myself first. Yes, good for you, Jennifer. Jennifer says, I am a people pleaser, but my therapist said I must stop and set my boundaries with people. Yep, setting boundaries, we should talk about setting boundaries. Setting boundaries can be very helpful if you feel like someone is truly taking advantage of you. But be careful with your approach of setting boundaries. A lot of times I think people get so like boundary hungry where they end up overcorrecting because remember, the wall you put up to protect yourself also becomes the wall that imprisons you. And so if you put up too many boundaries and barriers, you can end up feeling alone and isolated and disconnected. So just be mindful of that, right? You want to set up as few boundaries as possible, but no fewer, right? And what I mean by that is, yes, set boundaries where it's going to impact your mental health. Just don't overcorrect and build, giant Donald Trump wall boundaries where no one can get through. Cool. So, and then Madeline says, I needed to hear this today. Like I really did. Awesome, Maddie. I'm glad you're doing well. Haven't spoke to you in a while. And Allison says, I'm giving the power to my aunt. Yep, Allie, I know we talked about that a little bit. So my recommendation there is just take that back, right? Remember, at a fundamental level, guys, you have to realize that it's either going to be you're going to continuously try to play your old game of life and keep losing, or you're going to need to rewrite the rules. And once you rewrite the rules for yourself, then that's a really powerful thing because now you get to be in charge. When you write the rules of your own game, you can feel like you're winning as much as you want, which is really cool. Because instead of your number one North Star in your life being, I've got to please everybody, it could be something much more obtainable, like I'm going to do what I can to grow. I'm going to do what I can to give. I'm going to do what I can to love other people. But if they don't want to receive that love, that's cool. But I'm just going to send the love towards them, right? Any of those types of things would be more in your control and more doable. Just don't make it contingent on how other people respond to it. Okay? So great feedback, guys. I really love the engagement. As always, let us know if you have questions or comments. If you're dealing with an individual problem, you ever want help, we offer one free coaching session to every member in our community. So hit us up at any time at mentalhealthcoaching.com. We've got plenty of free resources for you as well. So just let us know and we want to serve you and help you. But thanks for the engagement as always, and pass this on to anybody you feel may need it. And I'll be excited to help you guys out next week, okay? Take care.